place like Apollo and all these other. Great, thank you. Thank you. Who else? Just come right up. Just keep right up there, and we'll get you. We got as much time as you got questions.
Kathy Santos, East Providence. I have a 26-year-old daughter who works for a small business. She does not have health insurance, and she'd like to be able to get it, except that it's unaffordable. She says, if I could afford health insurance, in the first place, I wouldn't be living with you and Dad. That's one. And I know about when we're talking about the COBRA, because I know 5 years ago when my husband was out of work, we were putting COBRA payments for health care on, on Visa while trying to pay everything else to keep us going, because my husband, pre-existing condition, heart problem. So it's like, don't need to go there. And, these are, I think that and I think the insurance man will be able to, be able to give us some better insight, but I would like to see nationally, all the insurance companies being able to, give you the best price, because that's what's going to drive it down. If you only have, two choices, the ceiling's going to be way up there on both of them, even though it's, now
I think it's universally agreed that monopolies are bad for consumers.
Oh yeah. And as far as like the whole thing, all right, I'm going to go on to the other thing too. I don't want anybody to be able to, have the insurance that they want. I have another daughter, her and her husband, who try to have a child, and they're, going to fertility clinic. But if they, don't want to be told what they can or cannot have as far as, features in their insurance. So that's another, thing that concerns them. And, the other thing too is, my son-in-law is a legal resident, and he did everything legally, to come here and such. And, it is a burden, if you don't do it, correctly. And I would like to see, somebody, locally in legislature, in our, Washington contingent, to have enough guts to say, we have a law for a reason, do it right or get out. And I think that's what I'm can afford, insurance, and if when she has to go for a medical, thing, she's going to have to work out a payment plan to make that happen. And somebody else, comes from another country and illegally, and all of a sudden, they get for the bubble, and it's just not right. And there's just so many issues. I don't think that having the government be in charge of anything is a good idea. Anything.
Questions, and maybe even reframe it a little bit. If you disagree with the way I'm reframing it, please tell me. What can we do to drive down the cost of insurance? The insurance costs are killing us. Joel, what can we do to drive those costs down?
I'd like to, if I may, first respond to something that you said. In the state of Rhode Island, the structure of health insurance is that you can really only buy health insurance through an employer. And that, by the way, cannot be sold with pre-existing conditions. But let's suppose you can't afford COBRA, or you're done with COBRA, or you're new in the area, you don't have a job yet. In this state, one little exception, you cannot buy health insurance without pre-existing conditions for individuals. That's something that really, really has to change. And the one exception is Blue Cross is a sure of last resort. Once a year, they let you in the door, they charge you for arm and a leg. So we need to get rid of pre-existing conditions for individual policies. Other parts of the country, that's pre-existing conditions are even sold with employer policies. That's really terrible. To answer your question about cutting costs, and I'm not defending health insurance companies, I don't work with them anymore, but they make about 4 or 5% profit on the insurance premiums we make, which, by the way, is a huge number, and it's a lot of dollars. But the majority of the costs are premiums. You're talking about, for instance, fertility treatment, $18,000 a treatment. So how do we get rid of that? Well, I'd ask you to look around the room. We're the problem. We need to get healthier. I can identify an American when I walk through Europe, anytime. It's usually the fat ones. And we need to work on that and have incentives for people to get healthier. Right now, it's like when I used to give my daughter the credit card. No limits, you just kept using it. So what we need to do is get people to be more responsible. We need to design things to make people more responsible so that we can control our health, be healthier, and cost less. It's really, really expensive to treat very, very sick people.
Like what, a soda tax? Like a soda tax?
Yeah.
You know what, the soda companies are, I have to agree with that, but the soda companies are pretty upset about that.
Anybody make Congress more responsible?
I think that,
Individuals, we can't
but
have government.
I think,
Come on, Rick, come on.
I think Joel's point, though, is something that you could consider in terms of health insurance, but that for reasons of politics is not on the table. I mean, in fact, what all of these bills consider community rated. There's some allowance for age, but basically there's no allowance. Look, the obvious incentive is, if you're overweight, maybe your health insurance should cost more. Or at least there shouldn't be a law preventing a company from offering a lower rate to people who recognize those incentives. In other words, why do we need to tax soda if we're arguing about health care? The answer is, why can't you get a discount if you're in good shape?
Yeah, I think the last thing we need is another ridiculous tax. It's social engineering through tax policy. Now, my understanding of tax policy is it was originally designed to raise money to pay for things like the Army and the Navy and to pay those police forces, the folks that we need to keep us safe. But it's evolved into a method to try and mold your behavior, to try and make Washington do what you want them to do. And the way they do it is through tax policy. That's wrong and needs to stop.
Those kinds of taxes taking away people's individual liberties and controlling your life.
That's right.
Question on saving costs too. The CBO has reported that only 3% of the insurance premiums are profit, which is rather standard for most industries. That's not the problem. It's we have a broken system. The system doesn't operate correctly. Clearly, in the past, it's always been structured that insurance is provided predominantly through your employer. And then, of course, we have the complaints that the employer isn't in control and the HMO scares and all that. We really need to get back to a system where the consumer is in charge of the money. And that's when real fiscal responsibility comes into play. When I was a kid, it was common to say, if you got a report from the doctor, that you get a second opinion. When's the last time you heard somebody talk about getting a second opinion from a doctor? It's just not part of the system anymore because we're told where to go and who to see. So that would be the first step, I would say, is to put the power of consumption in the consumer's hands as it should be. And that can be done by allowing those tax credits to the individual and not just to the employer.
The other thing too, Bill, we need to do is we need to drive down the costs that our medical professionals are facing in the cost of both defensive medicine, which is basically ordering a whole bunch of additional tests that you don't need, that you would be able to cover yourself from the insurance perspective. And then it's the cost of the malpractice insurance. One of the reasons that's so expensive is because we need meaningful tort reform. We don't need a test in one state. We know tort reform is what we need. We need to implement tort reform as any discussion of healthcare reform.